The diamond ring, worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, hit the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the silent boardroom. Natalie Ross looked at the man she'd been falling for, then at the 12 executives watching her like she was part of a business transaction, because that's exactly what she was. "I'm sorry, James, but I can't be bought." 3 years later, she discovered that everything she thought she knew about that moment was a lie. But let me take you back to where it all began, because to understand why Natalie walked away twice, you need to know who she was before James Colton entered her life. Natalie Ross was 26 years old, working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm in Seattle, Washington. She wasn't struggling. She had a decent apartment, paid her bills on time, and even managed to save a little each month. But she was tired. Tired of watching executives take credit for her work. Tired of being overlooked for promotions because she didn't network at the right country clubs. Tired of feeling invisible. Her best friend Sophie kept telling her she needed to get out more. "You're brilliant, Nat. You just need people to see it." So when Sophie dragged her to a tech industry mixer on a rainy Thursday evening, Natalie went mostly to stop the nagging. That's where she met him. James Colton wasn't supposed to be there. He was the James Colton, founder and CEO of Apex Technologies, a company worth $8 billion that revolutionized cloud security. At 32, he was on every most eligible bachelor list, though he rarely appeared at public events. But there he was, standing alone near the bar, looking distinctly uncomfortable in a room full of people trying to impress each other. Natalie didn't recognize him at first. She just saw a guy who looked as out of place as she felt. "These things are brutal, aren't they?" she said, sidling up next to him with her wine glass. He turned and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or relief? "You have no idea. I've had 3 people pitch me their startups in the last 10 minutes. Want me to pretend to be your girlfriend so they'll leave you alone?" Natalie said it as a joke, but his laugh was genuine. "I might take you up on that." They talked for 2 hours about everything except work. She told him about her thesis on behavioral economics. He told him about his obsession with vintage motorcycles. When he finally asked for her number, his hand was actually shaking. Natalie didn't know she just met a billionaire. And James didn't tell her. For 3 months, Natalie dated someone she thought was just James, a software developer who worked long hours and lived modestly. He picked her up in a normal sedan, took her to neighborhood restaurants, split bills with her because she insisted on paying her share. She fell for his terrible jokes and the way he listened, really listened, when she talked about her day. She fell for how he'd show up at her apartment at midnight with Thai food when she texted that she was working late. She fell for the man, not the portfolio. But here's what Natalie didn't know. James was falling even harder. For the first time in his adult life, someone looked at him and saw him. Not his net worth, not what he could do for their career, not the Colton fortune that came with expectations and strings attached. Just him. "I need to tell you something," he said one evening as they sat on her apartment balcony watching the city lights. Natalie's heart stuttered. This was it, The moment in every relationship where someone revealed the deal breaker. He was married. He was moving away. He didn't want anything serious. I haven't been completely honest with you about my work. She set down her coffee mug, bracing herself. I don't just work at Apex Technologies. I founded it. I'm the CEO. The words hung in the air between them. Natalie stared at him, processing. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. Right, and I'm secretly a Russian spy. His face didn't change. The laughter died in her throat. Wait, you're serious? He nodded, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted you to know me first, before all the rest of it. Natalie's mind raced. The modest car, probably one of dozens he owned. The work trips, board meetings, investor conferences. The way people occasionally stared at him in restaurants. They were recognizing one of the richest men in the country. I need some time to think, she said quietly. She spent 2 days working through her feelings. Was she angry he'd lied? Yes. Did she understand why? Also yes. Did it change how she felt about him? No. It didn't. When she called him back, her answer was simple. I fell for James, who brings me pad thai and laughs at his own jokes. If that's still who you are, then we're okay. His relief was palpable through the phone. That's exactly who I am. Then we're okay. For 6 months, they built something real. James introduced her to his world slowly. Private dinners first, then a charity gala, then finally a weekend at his actual home, a sprawling estate outside the city that made Natalie's jaw drop. But he also kept entering hers. He'd sit in her tiny apartment helping her prep for presentations. He'd pick up groceries with her on Sunday mornings. He made it work. Then came the night that changed everything. My mother wants to meet you, James said over dinner. His tone was careful, and Natalie caught the tension in his shoulders. Is that a bad thing? My mother is complicated. She has very specific ideas about what my life should look like, who I should be with. And I'm not it? You're everything I want. That's what matters. But when Natalie met Evelyn Colton in the private dining room of the city's most exclusive restaurant, Natalie understood James' hesitation immediately. Evelyn was elegance personified. Designer suit, perfect posture, and eyes that assessed Natalie like a balance sheet. Across from her sat 3 other people. Richard Sutherland, Apex's CFO, Patricia Monroe, head of the board, and someone James introduced as his lawyer, Thomas Webb. This isn't just dinner, Natalie realized with growing dread. This is an evaluation. The dinner was brutal. Every question Evelyn asked was designed to expose what Natalie lacked. Her education was good, but not Ivy League. Her family was loving, but not connected. Her career showed promise, but she wasn't a powerhouse. James tried to intervene, but his mother was skilled at making condescension sound like curiosity. And your parents, what do they do? My father teaches high school history. My mother is a nurse. How admirable. public service. The way Evelyn said it made it sound like charity work. Across the table, Richard was checking his phone, not even pretending to care about her answers. Patricia watched with the detached interest of someone observing a job interview they already knew would end in rejection. Natalie excused herself to the restroom, needing air. When she returned, she caught the tail end of a conversation. Simply not suitable for the optics we need. The merger with Donovan Industries requires... James's voice cut through, sharp with anger. This isn't a business deal, Mother. Everything is a business deal, darling. You know that. Natalie walked back to the table on shaking legs and somehow made it through dessert. In the car afterward, James was furious. I'm so sorry. That was completely out of line. It's fine. It's not fine. They had no right. James? Natalie turned to face him. Do they do this with everyone you date? His silence was answer enough. Have you ever told them no? He ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated. The company, the board expectations, the family legacy. I'm asking if you've ever just chosen what you want, regardless of what they think. The question sat between them for the rest of the drive. 3 weeks later, James asked Natalie to come to Apex headquarters. I want you to see where I work, really see it. She should have known something was off when he led her not to his office, but to the top floor conference room. She should have noticed the way his hand trembled slightly when he opened the door. The entire board of directors was there, 12 people in expensive suits seated around a table like judges at a tribunal. James, what? He took her hand and suddenly he was down on one knee, and there was a ring, a massive, flawless diamond that caught the light from every angle, and his voice was saying words about forever and partnership and love. But Natalie's eyes were on the faces around the table. This wasn't joy. This wasn't celebration. This was a performance. Richard was taking notes. Patricia was checking her watch. Evelyn sat at the head of the table with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And in front of each board member was a folder. She could just make out the label on the nearest one. Merger proposal. Apex Donovan. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. James Colton wasn't proposing because he loved her. He was proposing because his board required it, because somewhere in that merger deal was probably a clause about family stability or settled personal life, because she was a checkbox on a corporate strategy document. Natalie? James's voice held a note of uncertainty. He was still on one knee, ring extended, waiting for her answer. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since they'd met, she saw not the man she'd fallen for, but the CEO who'd built an empire by making calculated decisions. Stand up, James, she said quietly. What? Stand up, James. He rose slowly, confusion and the first hint of fear crossing his face. Natalie took the ring box from his hand. The diamond felt heavy, cold. She looked at each board member in turn, watching their expressions, anticipation, impatience, boredom, and felt something inside her crystallize. I'm sorry, James, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But I can't be bought. She set the ring on the conference table with a decisive click. "Natalie, wait!" James reached for her arm, but she stepped back. "You had 3 months to tell me the truth. 3 months to warn me this was coming. You let me walk in here blind." Her voice cracked, but she kept it steady. "I thought what we had was real. But this?" She gestured at the room, the board, the merger folders. "This is just another business transaction, and I'm not for sale." She walked out of the conference room with her head high, even though her hands were shaking. She walked past the assistants who'd clearly been told to expect a celebration. She walked through the lobby where someone had put out champagne flutes. She walked away from $8 billion and didn't look back. Three years passed. Natalie rebuilt her life piece by piece. She quit her consulting job, got her MBA, and joined a smaller firm where her work actually mattered. She dated occasionally, but nothing serious. She told herself she was over James Colton. She was lying. Then, one morning, her phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Natalie Ross?" The voice was female, professional. "Yes." "My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm an attorney with Brightman and Associates. I'm calling about James Colton." Natalie's stomach dropped. "Is he okay?" "He's fine, but I need to speak with you in person about a matter involving him. It's urgent. Can you meet me today?" 2 hours later, Natalie sat in a downtown law office across from a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a file folder that seemed too thin to contain anything important. "Thank you for coming on short notice," Jennifer said. "What I'm about to tell you is confidential, and it's going to be difficult to hear." She opened the folder and slid a document across the desk. It was dated 4 years ago, 1 year before James had proposed. "This is a contract between James Colton and his mother, Evelyn Colton, along with the Apex Board of Directors. Read Clause 17. Natalie's eyes scanned the legal language, then stopped cold. "The undersigned, James Alexander Colton, agrees to marriage within 18 months to a candidate pre-approved by the board contingent upon successful negotiation of the Apex-Donovan merger. Failure to comply will result in forced removal as CEO and liquidation of primary stock holdings per the founding charter." "They forced him?" Natalie's voice was barely a whisper. Jennifer nodded. "Evelyn discovered James was seeing someone, you, and moved up the timeline. The board meeting, the public proposal, they ambushed him too. James had planned to propose to you privately, on your terms. He wanted to leave Apex first, step down voluntarily. But they backed him into a corner. Why didn't he tell me?" "Because there's more." Jennifer pulled out another document. "After you left, James refused to go through with the board's alternative candidates. He fought them for 2 years, lost his position as CEO, and spent the last year systematically buying back board seats from members who've retired or been outvoted. He's been dismantling his mother's control piece by piece." She slid over a third paper, a stock holdings report dated 1 week ago. As of last Monday, James regained majority control of Apex Technologies. He's CEO again, but this time, no one can force him into anything. And the first thing he did was hire me to find you. Natalie's hands were shaking. Why? Because he never stopped looking for you. You changed your phone number, moved apartments. He respected that. He thought you didn't want to be found. But 3 weeks ago, he was diagnosed with a cardiac arrhythmia. Not immediately life-threatening, but serious. It was a wake-up call. Jennifer's expression softened. He wanted you to know the truth, even if you never speak to him again. He wanted you to understand that the proposal wasn't a lie, just the circumstances around it. She pushed one final item across the desk. An envelope with Natalie's name written in James's handwriting. He wrote this the night you walked out. He's been carrying it ever since. Natalie didn't open the letter in the office. She walked to the same coffee shop where she and James had their first real date, where he'd admitted his terrible taste in music and she'd stolen fries off his plate. The letter was dated 3 years ago, written on hotel stationery. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Natalie, you were right about everything. I should have warned you. I should have told you about the contract, about the board's ultimatum, about what that meeting really was. I thought if I could just get through it, if I could give them what they wanted, they'd leave us alone and we could build a life anyway. I was wrong. Watching you walk away was watching the only real thing in my life disappear because I was too much of a coward to fight for it the right way. You deserved better than a boardroom proposal. You deserved better than me treating our relationship like something that needed board approval. I'm leaving Apex. Not today, not tomorrow, but I'm going to dismantle everything my mother built that turned this company into a cage. And when I'm free, really free, I'm going to find you. Not to ask you to come back, not to propose again, just to tell you that you were right, that loving someone means choosing them, even when it costs you everything else. I choose you. I should have said that 3 years ago. I'm saying it now, even though you're not here to hear it. Always, James. Natalie sat in that coffee shop and cried for what they'd lost, for what he'd sacrificed, for the 3 years they could have had if his courage had matched his intentions. And then she made a decision. If you believe real love means choosing someone over everything else, hit that subscribe button. People who treat relationships like business deals won't. And you need to hear what Natalie did next. She showed up at Apex headquarters the next morning without an appointment. The new receptionist, someone who didn't remember her from 3 years ago, was polite but firm. Mr. Colton doesn't take walk-in meetings. Tell him Natalie Ross is here. He'll see me. 5 minutes later, she was in the elevator to the top floor. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't know what she was going to say. Didn't know if 3 years was too long, if too much had changed, if... The elevator doors opened. James stood in the hallway like he'd been waiting. He looked older, tired. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. His suit was more rumpled than the James she remembered would have allowed. He looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. You got the letter. I got the letter. Jennifer wasn't supposed to give it to you. That was meant to stay with my lawyer, to be delivered only if... He stopped. Why are you here? Natalie stepped out of the elevator. They stood 5 feet apart, a distance that felt like miles. 3 years ago, You asked me a question in front of 12 people who had no business being there. His face tightened with old pain. Natalie, I'm not finished. She took a breath. You asked the question wrong, at the wrong time, for the wrong reasons. But the answer you wanted, the answer I would have given you if you'd asked me in your car or on my balcony or at that terrible Thai restaurant we both loved. She closed the distance between them. The answer was yes. James looked at her like he didn't dare believe what he was hearing. Was? Past tense. She watched him flinch. Because I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I built a career I'm proud of. I learned to stand on my own. I stopped waiting for someone to choose me and started choosing myself. I understand. His voice was hoarse. I don't blame you. I just thank you for coming to tell me in person. I'm still not finished. Natalie reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. This is for you. He opened it, confused. Inside was a simple silver band. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. Engraved on the inside were 2 words: choose me. I bought this 2 years ago. I was going to throw it away 100 times, but I kept it because somewhere underneath all the anger and hurt, I hoped you were out there fighting to become someone who could wear it. She met his eyes. Jennifer told me what you gave up, what you dismantled, what you sacrificed. So I'm here to ask a different question. She took the ring from the box. Her hands were steady now. James Colton, will you choose me? Not because a board requires it, not because it makes business sense, not because it fits a timeline or satisfies expectations, but because when you look at your life, you can't imagine it without me in it. The tears on his face were answer enough, but he said the words anyway. Every day, for the rest of my life. She slipped the ring on his finger, and this time, the answer is yes. He kissed her there in the hallway of the company he'd rebuilt, and it felt nothing like the sterile conference room from 3 years ago. It felt like coming home. 6 months later, they got married in Natalie's parents' backyard. Her father performing the ceremony, her mother crying happy tears, and Sophie as maid of honor. No board members, no merger clauses, no one who thought love was a line item on a balance sheet. James wore the silver band she'd given him. Natalie wore a ring he'd designed himself, not the massive diamond from before, but something uniquely hers. A simple sapphire, because it matched her eyes, set in a band engraved with the date of their first coffee shop meeting. At the reception, Evelyn Colton showed up uninvited. She stood at the edge of the yard, watching with an expression Natalie couldn't quite read. James started toward her, but Natalie put a hand on his arm. "Let me." She walked over to the woman who tried to turn their relationship into a transaction. "You must be very disappointed." "In what?" "That he gave up so much for you. His position, his board relationships, the merger that would have doubled the company's value." Natalie smiled, genuinely smiled. He didn't give up anything that mattered. He just stopped letting other people define what matters. She turned to walk away, then paused. "The ring I gave him cost $42. The one he gave me costs maybe $200. And they mean more than your $8 billion empire ever could. I hope someday you understand why." She left Evelyn standing there and returned to her husband. That word still felt wonderfully strange, who was laughing at one of her father's terrible jokes. "Everything okay?" he asked, pulling her close. "Everything's perfect." And for the first time in years, she meant it completely. Comment, love isn't a business deal, if you're Team Natalie. People who treat relationships like transactions can't win. Because at the end of the day, the only thing worth choosing is the person who chooses you back every single time.